Hey everybody, it's Trish Carr, and we are live on Facebook for another episode of Sister to Sister. Thank you so much for being with me. Do me a favor, before I get started and bring on my guest, who I know you are going to want to hear from. She is a well-known speaker. She's an entertainer in what she does, in that she's always live doing things to share her knowledge and to explain how people can have a better life in terms of wellness and health and business and success. So you're going to love her. But here's the thing. We're going to be talking for about 15 minutes about a really serious subject. But I want to take it out of being so heavy. Let's just have these conversations. And the conversation is about racism, because the more we can talk about it, the more that we can hear the experiences of people who may have dealt with it, the more we can understand. Hey, I was brought up a white girl, and I was socialized as a white girl. So for me to be able to understand on a heart level, I need to have these conversations, and I love to share them with you. Because the more that we can learn, the more that we can know about each other, the better we all can enjoy each other, embrace each other, our differences and our commonalities. So my guest today is igniting the change we want to see in the world. She is a highly requested empowerment speaker and a mindset strategist. And this conversation, many people say it's political, but it's not. This is a human condition and a human conversation. So I'm really excited to have media personality, corporate CEO, a woman whose global platform has served and reached more than 20 million people. She has like many of us, but especially this story, she is an empowerment speaker and a mindset strategist. What she came out of, what she, as a young child, experienced. She was 6 years old when she was raped, and she lived in silence and fear with that nightmare for 15 years before she broke her silence and freed herself from the bondage of what many would call being the victim. And she turned it into her greatest victory. And now she inspires others to their victory. So please help me welcome the fantastic Lotus Riche. So great to have you, Lotus.
Hello, Trish. I am so happy to be here on this amazing show, Sister to Sister, as we talk about this amazing, tough, but very well needed conversation about racism. So thank you so much for having me on
It's
your
my
show.
pleasure.
And what a
Thank you,
wonderful
my
intro.
sister. Thank you, my sister. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you being here. And that's quite a story. Just mentioning that you were
Yes.
raped at 6 years old, it just
Yes.
hurts my heart. And you've been able to overcome and actually be the victor in
Yes.
this situation. What would you
Yes.
say is the thing that helped you through that time where you were silent for so long?
I think my sister, my big sister Daisy, and I say she's my big sister. She's older than me, but she's shorter than me. So that's like an inside joke for us because she's older, but I'm taller, so I'm bigger, so to speak, right?
Right, I
Um,
get it.
she helped me because she was the only one that I confided in when it happened, and I swore her to secrecy. And so I realize now that that was a really tough thing to swear someone to
Yeah.
swear them to secrecy, because she carried this burden with me for 15 years until I decided to tell my parents. And I think one of the primary things that helped me along the way was my parents, because they were always teaching us about love, teaching us about forgiveness, teaching us to be expressive with who we are and how we are. And I think those are the fundamental nuggets that I had to take with me. So it helped to comfort me along the way. And the most important thing, and I've learned this over time as well, is forgiveness. Because what helped me to forgive this kid was he might have been maybe 11 or 12. And I thought that this kid that's doing this to me, this is an adult thing. So some adult man must be doing this to him. And that helped me. And really, above all, it's the mercies of God that I've always embraced, from my grandmother, my great grandmothers, always praying for me. I think it really helped, and grandfathers too. So I have to throw those in there. So
Yeah.
I think those are the things that helped me come through, because I couldn't have done it by myself. I really couldn't.
No, no,
Couldn't
you
have done
had to have a confidant.
it. Yep.
You had to. And how generous of you to be able to look into the heart of that person and to be
Yeah.
able to forgive at that level when you were so
Yeah.
young. So you must have had the right people around you with the right messages, Lotus.
Yeah. Well, let me share this with you. I remember I was a teenager and still hadn't told my parents about the ordeal. I came home one day and I was crying. I was in the kitchen. My mom was, I think she was in the kitchen cooking or whatever. And I was crying. She was like, "What are you crying for?" I was like, "Well, I'm crying because they were talking about me." And I was like so upset. And we know, folks, let's face it, when people talk about us, they tell lies, or even if it's the truth, and the truth hurts us and we don't like it, we're upset, we're emotional, we're crying. And it's like the why me. And I said to my mom, they're talking about me and they told lies on me and whatever, whatever. And my mom said, you know, they told lies on Jesus. They talked about Jesus. So who are you? I was like, oh my God, how could you say that to me? I was like, what? Of course, I didn't say that to my mom, but of course I thought that, right? So it's
Right.
funny because that in that moment, that is one of the most powerful things that my mother could have ever said to me. Because here's the thing, globally, we know the story of Jesus. We know the story that Jesus came to the earth plane to free men and women of their sins, to take the stripes, to take the beatings, and to be crucified and sacrificed.
Right.
And that let me know that if our human side of us being spiritual beings will crucify who we have come to know as our Lord and Savior in the flesh sense of the word, because Jesus is known as the Son of the Almighty, I'm in good company. Because
Yes.
I looked at it like those same people probably was around talking about Jesus. Some of their ancestors probably around there talking about me. So guess what? I had to learn that even though people are talking about me, doesn't mean that I have to succumb to what they say their truth is about me, because I know the truth of me.
Right.
And I never forget what Vicky Winan says in this song that she says. She says, it doesn't matter what people say about you. What matters is what God knows about you. And that is one of the most powerful things that I've carried with me, because my mother was the first one to tell me, basically, that I was in good company. They talked about Jesus. So who was I?
Right.
I am a descendant of the Most High God. So therefore, if they talk about a descendant of the Most High God, I must be doing something right.
That's right, sister. You are absolutely
So
right. Your mother
yeah,
was
so
so smart.
that helped me. It hurt like the Dickens when my mother said it, but it carried me for so
Yeah.
many years, Trish. When I thought I couldn't make it, when I faced adversity, it carried me. Those words of wisdom. And that's why I do words of wisdom on my show, because it doesn't have to be a long drawn out paragraph. It doesn't have to be, some main novel. Sometimes it's just the small words of wisdom that carry us over a lifetime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I'm so glad we have lots of people joining us. Sarah Beth and Rochelle and Angela and Tara, Scarlett, Jasper, uh, Ezekiel, lots of people joining us today.
Awesome.
So as
Awesome.
we talk about the things that get you through, and the fact that you're a self-empowered woman. You
Yes.
grew up in New Jersey, you now live in DC,
Mhm.
and with in the wake of Black Lives Matter, that's how this show was born, was in the wake of Black Lives Matter. I wanted to be able to do something from my
Yeah.
platform And I believe that it's the conversation white people need to have, right? The
Yes.
problem is with white
Mhm.
people. So, would you share a little bit about experiences that you've had? And I know that I can see how you've dealt with them, but what kind of experiences have you had with dealing with racism?
Well, let me just say that when I was growing up, I grew up in a melting pot. I have a very interracial family. And growing up in New Jersey, I didn't experience a lot of the racism, although it's always been there. Let's face it, racism has been around since the dawn of humankind. And I say that because if you look back, even BC, people were having race wars. One religion was better than the other. My skin is lighter than yours. You know, it's been around for ages.
Right.
Yet the travesty is that here in the United States, where I'm from, I experience it more here than anywhere I've ever been. And I've traveled globally, I've lived globally, and it's without question the past 50 years, to say the least, has really been
Yes.
unequivocally some of the most racial, um, tense years of many people's lives. And it's terrible. But I have faced racism. When I traveled, I remember I went to Alabama. I was 10 years old, and we went to visit my aunt um, in Alabama, Aunt May Gussie. She's gone on now, but I'll never forget her. Strong woman. And when we went to visit her, lo and behold, my mom and my aunt and my cousins, they were downtown Alabama, and the Ku Klux Klan were marching in
Oh,
Alabama. And I was a 10-year-old. I had never um, witnessed racism um, like that before. Now, I wasn't downtown with my mom. My mom came back and they talked. And so, children, we hear adults, we hear you guys. And just to hear the the pain in her voice, um, that this is still going on. And that probably was in the 70s.
right.
Okay. Um, it bothered me. It stayed with me, but it didn't consume me. Yet, as I traveled as a teenager, as an adult, I didn't feel a lot of the racism. But even in New Jersey, in Clifton, New Jersey, when I was 9 and 10 years old, I did experience racism, but it wasn't so profound as what I see today. They had a pool, and it's called Costello Pool, and I hope I can say that.
Yeah,
In
sure you
Clifton, New
can.
Jersey,
Sure you can.
Black people were not allowed to swim at that pool. On Main Avenue in New Jersey, Clifton, New Jersey, my family, we lived in an apartment building before my parents bought their home. And once I crossed the street, I was in Clifton. And the pool was right maybe a half a tick. And for the military people, you know what I'm talking about, a half a tick, maybe a half a block away from where I lived. But because of the color of my skin, I was not welcomed to that pool.
So, what year are we talking about here,
Early
Lotus?
70s, early 70s
In the North.
in the North, early 70s.
So, that's surprising because
Yep.
that's, and I, again, I was socialized as white. I
Mhm.
wouldn't have noticed those things, but
Yes.
I grew up in New York.
Hmm.
And it
Yes.
shocks me that in that metropolitan area,
Hmm.
that there was
Yes.
segregation.
Yes. And
It's
it's pervasive. It's pervasive. I've been in Canada. I've been overseas, Japan, Korea, all over the place. And one thing is pervasive where predominance of white people are, there is this blatant racism for people with melanin in their skin. And it doesn't matter if you're a Black American, if you will. I really
Right.
don't like that term, but I'm utilizing it so people can understand, because we have to, it seems we have to put a tag on everything for it to
Right.
make sense to us. So if you're a person with melanin in your skin, it doesn't matter if you're from Africa, Australia, Europe, it doesn't matter,
Right.
because people with melanin in their skin are all over the place. But here's the thing, where there is a predominance of Caucasian people,
Mhm.
there is experienced racism. And that's unfortunate. And here's the thing. I have a lot of friends who are of the Caucasian persuasion, and sometimes they don't get it. They
Right.
don't get it because there is white privilege. And when people who are of the Caucasian persuasion or white, however you identify, folks, because people have put you in a box. You've
Right.
got to be named Indian, you've got to be named white, you got to be named Black. However you identify, remember this. Many people understand that all people of color are not prejudiced, but we have a lot that are. All white people are not prejudiced, but we have a lot that are.
Right.
Here's the key. It's pervasive. And unless we stand up globally against racism, it's going to continue to take root. It's going to continue to affect us on a cellular level. This is why we are sick on the planet, because we allow racism to go deep down inside to the very cellular level of what God has created, because we make a choice to. We are not born thinking as racism or racist. We are not born believing that just because you look different
No.
from me, that you are worse than me or you are better than me. But here, systematically, America has created an environment where we are racist against everybody. When the pandemic
Exactly.
started, people were going around punching out and killing Chinese people.
I know. And Asian
Okay,
people are still dealing with that
right.
kind of hate.
And this is why I shine light on it all, because
Right.
I can't turn a blind eye to the fact that an Asian person got knocked out and got killed because people believe that they brought the
The
pandemic here.
virus. Right.
Okay,
The
well,
virus.
oh my God, you brought the virus here, it's a pandemic, it's because of you. That's the same rhetoric white America used against Black people for eons, saying that Black people didn't have souls and Black people are no good. Black people are lazy. Black people are uneducated. Well, here's the caveat. If Black people are uneducated, this is because when they came to this country, they were stripped of their natural language. They were made to take on English, which often was not spoken properly by the plantation owners.
Right.
So if they were ignorant, it was because they were taught ignorance. And the further caveat to that is that they were made to stay ignorant. They were killed if they were caught reading a book. They were killed if they were taught teaching each other. They were killed if they were taught or seen talking in their native language. Racism has really killed the nature of love globally on so many levels. But
Mm.
it is those that say, no, we will not let the nature of love die because of the way you feel about a person, because the pigmentation in their skin. And
Right.
so
That's
that
exactly
is
right.
one of the reasons why Sister to Sister is here today having this conversation to say, listen, continue to lean on love, lead with love. It doesn't, see, here's the thing, Trish. It is our differences that make us so great as spiritual beings having a human experience.
Here, here,
And
my
those
friends.
that would rather separate us because of our differences which makes us brilliant collectively as a race of spiritual beings having a human experience, not a race of Jewish people, not a race of African Americans, not a race of Spaniards, but as a race of human beings
Humans.
having a
Yes.
spiritual existence.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
is what empowers us. But if we continue to allow people to perpetuate racism, We are all guilty of it. If you see someone, and I've had this happen, I've been a manager in a store, and a Spanish speaking person came in. I speak Spanish because of my dad. We learned Spanish coming up in our home. They would come into the store. Everyone would ignore them because they didn't speak the language.
Right.
So I would, ven acá aquí, por favor,
Oh,
and I
wow, that
would
was a
help
great
them.
accent. You have a great
Okay.
accent
Thank
there.
you. And even in the prison systems, when I worked in the prison systems, Spanish speaking people were disenfranchised from getting jobs because they spoke Spanish. I had to go and talk to the doctor and say, Doc, and thank God I had a great rapport with them. Doc, in their medical record, it says that they cannot be given anything that causes critical thinking. This is not a critical thinking thing. I have a degree in psychology. So thank God for that. I was able to delineate it's not a critical thinking skill. It's a problem with the ability to communicate in the English language effectively. But the onus is on us as workers for the state. We need to understand our Spanish speaking inmates. And the way we do that is to educate ourselves, not to disenfranchise them from having jobs. So, what I did, Trish, is myself and a gentleman that worked with me who was Caucasian, by the way, but he had lived in Argentina for a while and he became very fluent in Spanish. That's the love. That's the love. He and I transmogrified the whole application. So Spanish speaking people could apply, could understand what was being asked of them, and could do the job. I changed the way things work because I stood up. I allowed my voice to be heard and I took action. I didn't cower, but I had
And
to do it.
that, my friend, is the key to everything.
Yes,
Yes, and that's the key. The key is to take action when you see something. The key
yes,
is to not just stand back and let things happen, but to be
yes,
the person who says, hey, wait a minute, let's do something about this.
yes.
Dr. Lotus, what do you say to people who, when you talk about the history and the slavery and not being able to be taught, what do you say to people who say that was a long time ago and we're here now and it's not Jim Crow and this is 2021 and racism is not as prevalent as it once was. What do you say about that to people?
I vehemently disagree. Uh, Jim Crow is very much alive, well, and effective, and it is seen very much so in the disparity of jobs. It when it comes to people of color, okay, not just people of color, but also our Latino brothers and sisters, our African brothers and sisters, and many other um, people who are not from the United States, who are
Yeah,
not Anglo-Saxon.
Arabs and people who practice
Exactly. And
Islam.
exactly. And that's why I'm covering all those who are not Anglo-Saxon. If you look at the statistical data that is shared, and it's global, this is not a mystery, of the disparity when it comes to jobs as it relates to people of color, the numbers are unbalanced. Okay. Even within the sex, males typically make more than women. Okay. And this has been going on forever. Yet the numbers of people who are people of color have melanin in their skin, whether they're from the United States or abroad, but they come here to work. The jobs that they are oftentimes offered, even though they may have the expertise, they may have 2 or 3 degrees, but the person who is Caucasian typically will get the job.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, and I've been the person who you come to be interviewed by. I've been very, very fortunate. I've worked for some of the top corporations on the planet. And it's not because I laid on my back. It's not because I I said, yes, sir, I'm not a master girl and I'm not a Motisa tribe person.
Right.
I speak my mind articulately. I'm always open to learn and I do what is necessary to get to where I'm going so that I can help open the way for others. And what I've seen pervasively here in the United States is that there's a huge disparity in numbers when it comes to jobs for women of color and for men of color. And oftentimes, when men and women of color get in certain jobs, which are management jobs, they have become, in some companies, now this is not true of all companies, but in some companies, they become the token person.
Yeah.
And the Jim Crow is still much yet alive. And let's talk about the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan don't only wear sheets anymore. They're in these offices and they're looking in our faces every day, smiling in our faces and telling us, "Oh, we love you. We want to have you in the corporation," but they're going to their own private meetings after work is over. So what's happening now is that people are cloaking differently, okay? And so, because they're cloaking differently, we are not aware of who is working right next to us, who is a part of the Ku Klux Klan, or who is a part of any white supremacist organization. Now, the caveat to that is white people are saying now, well, when you guys wear I'm black and I'm proud, or say Black Lives Matter shirts, then I'm wrong if I wear a White Lives Matter shirt. Well, the thing is, no one is wrong to wear whatever shirt that you want to wear when you're expressing that your life matters as a person on the planet. This is how I like to level things out, but people don't want to hear this. People don't want to hear this. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And when we look at people as a spiritual being, which we come from energy, the color of our skin will have no value other than it's what we use to cover our body while we're on the planet. But when we see each other as spiritual beings, it levels the playing field. When we see each other as spiritual beings having a human experience, we also know that we become educated through the education systems and through our own experiences. So, a level of education that a person aspires to, whether it be in school or not in school, it gives them the ability to be a valuable citizen on the planet. But yet, when we look at something like our skin color, it gives us an excuse to be racist towards someone. If we say that that person is from India, or they're an Arab, okay, and because they're an Arab, I'm afraid to get on a plane with them, just because our social media during 9/11 showcased people who may be from Saudi or Iran or wherever they're from. Now they've become the enemy. And it's the same thing with this COVID thing. Take the vaccination, don't take the vaccination. My thing is, do what brings you peace. But as long as we hate each other, I'm going to hate you because you're taking the vaccine. I'm going to hate you because you're not. Again, that's a form of racism within itself. And we continue to
Yes.
perpetuate it. So every level of perpetuation, whether it's gay rights, whether it's rights to marry, whether it's Indians, whether it's Americans, whether it's white Americans, as long as we perpetuate racism of any sort, we are damning ourselves and we are not bringing ourselves together. We are moving ourselves further apart. And that is why, systemically, here in the United States, racism, Jim Crow is very much still alive. Now, no one's going to tell you, oh, you can come in and this is whites only fountain to drink from. However, they will position it for the black population. Look in the black population neighborhoods. Why are there liquor stores on every corner? Why is there a hair store in every area of the black neighborhood that people from other countries come in, they get loans, they get grants to open these stores, and a black person can't even get that same grant? And you can't say because it's because of bad credit, because people that come from other countries, they don't have credit in this country. And the
Yeah.
very backs that this country has been built on, they can't even get the recognition that they deserve. And when we talk about two acres and a mule, that has never happened. We haven't gotten reparations. Jewish
Right.
people have gotten reparations. Spaniards have gotten reparations. Many people know about the Spanish War, okay? But people of color have not gotten that. And we talk about it all the time, but quite frankly, people are not doing a damn thing about it.
Well, and you know, Lotus, I got to agree with you. When it comes to the conversation around reparations, boy, I mean, and you rile people when you talk about white privilege and they don't see it, so they don't understand it. But when you talk about reparations, what I hear is, well, again, that was a long time ago. And I didn't do anything. I wasn't a slave owner. I wasn't the one who brought slaves from Africa. But the truth is that people of color, specifically Black people who were born to live in slavery here, have been kept out of wealth building. That's really the truth. That those people who were brought over here to serve white people for hundreds of years have been held back from the opportunities that I, as a white person, has. So there's no way for them to get a leg up. I was listening to a podcast with Rashida Jones and Bill Gates, which is a great podcast. And when you are born into poverty, or you are born and you live in the projects and you're just getting by, your chance to get out of there is limited to about 15%. You have a 15% chance of getting out of poverty, of getting out of living in a slum area, a ghetto area, because that's what it is. So, and that's because you haven't been given access to build wealth. Reparations is all about access to build wealth.
Exactly.
That's all there is to it. So,
and
you know, that's another conversation for another day, for sure.
And here's the thing, you know, we can't talk about it all on one show. And Trish, you and I are both very passionately charged, because let's face it, this is a tough topic.
Yes, we are.
Okay? Because especially if you live in America, you have if you're smart, you have a Black friend, you have an Indian friend, you have a Latino friend, you have a Caucasian friend. You welcome people in your circle. And so this topic is tough because you don't want to hurt the feelings of your friends. But here's what a brother told me. If you have a friend that cringes when you say you're celebrating being a person of color, they may not be a friend. When you have a friend and they cringe because they don't like it, you need to second guess that. Here's what I say: educate that friend. And while you're educating them, you'll be educated with their plight. Because yes, white people on this planet, I'm not just saying in America, white people on this planet have been given carte blanche. And now you talked about being in the projects. I have a lot of friends who lived in the projects. I didn't grow up in the projects, but I have friends that lived there. I hung out down there with my friends because they were my friends. And what you said is true. But there are white people in the projects too.
Totally.
There are Spanish people in the projects too.
Absolutely.
So again, there's a systemic way of racism affecting people who are entrenched in poverty. Right. So if you can prevent people from becoming wealthy and keep them in poverty, that's a level of racism that a lot of people aren't even talking about.
Yeah. And that's actually the worst of what's happening for us.
Exactly.
So, you know, I really love that you said to educate each other and to look in each other's hearts from that spiritual perspective of being a spiritual being, having a human experience. And even the people who may be cringing. So I'll tell you, I had a woman on the show a few weeks ago who's been married to, she's white, married to a man of color for 25 years. And she said, even I have been so socialized as a young child that when I see a Black man walking behind me, I get nervous. And she says, that's crazy. I'm married to a Black man. I'm immersed in Black culture. Yet my internal voice that I got from my parents and my school and my teacher transcends even that. And that's, you know, so we always have to be continuously learning and continuously growing. And one of the organizations I've recently become a member of and learned about is Color of Change. And
Mhm.
let me see, it's colorofchange.org.
Right.
And I urge all of you to go on Color of Change because,
Mhm.
again, people's experience cannot be argued with. And what they are is they are the largest racial justice organization in the nation. And
Yes.
on their website, you'll see stories of real people who've suffered racism. Now, I'm not saying that not, your life wasn't hard and you
Mhm.
didn't have a hard time too, but the color of your skin didn't add to that. So, Lotus, I really, really appreciate you. You know, what you said early on about that experience of being raped at 6 years old and being
Yep.
able to look at that boy and feel compassion for what he might be going through that caused him to do that. That is what I want to leave everybody with today, is that just look in people's hearts. Be that spiritual being having a human experience. And remember that all of us are just energy. Some of us have more melanin, and that's all there is to it. So I thank you so much, Lotus.
You're
And let me
welcome.
give you an opportunity. Is there anything else you want to share before we close out today?
I'd like to thank you again for having me on the show. And I look forward to being a part of this active movement where we're just calling it like we see it. We're putting it out there. This is hard.
Yeah,
Sometimes people may say, "Oh my God, did she really say that?" Yes, I said it. And I want to thank you for making sure you continue to keep this platform going to speak our truths, because this is where we lose our way when we don't speak our truth. We have to speak our truth and not be
right.
controlled by the theys. Henry Kissinger said, "Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. Who controls money can control the world." Here's what I'm saying to you today: allow yourself not to be controlled by the myths that you hear about other nationalities. Get to know people really from the heart space as a spiritual being having a human experience, and give them the opportunity to know you. Share your stories, because the stories we share, no matter how painful they are, can help us to break free of the chains of bondage that's been holding us back from being the best people that we can be. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lotus Riche. I so appreciate you and all that you're doing to make a difference in this world. Be sure, everybody, to go to lotusricheignitesyou.com or social media and connect with Dr. Lotus. She is extraordinary, and you will learn so much from her shows. Thank you for being with me, and thank you all for tuning in today. I'll
Yes.
see you again soon with another episode of Sister to Sister. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.